Hello, everybody. This is Hondo Carpenter, the host of the Las Vegas Raiders Insider and the Las Vegas Raiders beat writer for Sports Illustrated. It's great to be with you today. I'm joined by Michael France, who's one of our staff writers that helps me cover the Las Vegas Raiders. Remember, every single day, a minimum of 10 written articles, si.com/NFL/Raiders is where you can find us. Well, we're constantly putting out more information than anybody else covering your beloved Las Vegas Raiders. Frenchie, good to have you back on.
Yeah, good to be here. Let's talk Raiders football, man.
Man, it looks good. You got a haircut. I bet that's the influence of your parents, but it looks good, my friend.
That's right. Living here is like living for the Steinbrenner Yankees, man. You gotta keep it nice and tight.
Oh, that's a good line. That's older than your age, by the way, so I credit you for that one. All right, let's get into it. We're going to talk all Raiders today, but a couple of things that I want us to discuss because I think they're rather important is, AP uh, has really set the tone for the season and what he wants. He said it all. I think to have said, listen, what I wanted to accomplish in minicamp was accomplished, and these off-season practices, they're not for evaluation. They are for installation. And so, listen, is there more I can do? Yes. And I'm using the voice of AP. But what my goal was accomplished. Get out of here and hit your 5-week vacation early. I think he has just set the tone perfectly. I love your thoughts.
And I totally agree. And it's just the fact that going forward, he's talking about compete, compete, compete. Veterans know they got to compete. Young guys know they got to compete. He's really established that culture and that environment of competition. Everyone competed, of course, at mandatory mini camp just because that's the environment he's fostering with these new coaches and the new system he's trying to implement. And you also get the sense that Antonio Pierce himself is competing to be a better coach and to be a better
Mhm.
leader of these men going in to the obviously this little bit of hiatus before the real deal starts.
You just made a really good point, Michael, when you talked about you felt like AP's competing. I can tell you that is the exact um, feeling of it, and it was the exact impression that you get. That's a brilliant analysis on your part because it's 100% true. And I love that he's competitive at everything and he wants everybody else competing at everything. Let's turn to a guy that is really a mini me version of him, Rob Leonard, the defensive line coach. He's extremely well respected around the league, and he's a young coach that's on a meteoric rise. Um, when you look at Malcolm Kuntz and what happened when AP essentially told Patrick Graham take the roof off, and then he did that with his staff. And you look at Rob Leonard. I've been heralding his presence and the way he approaches things for a long time. I'd like your thoughts on Rob Leonard.
Love listening him talk football. He's very vocal, but he's also kind of calm and nuanced, and he just oozes passion and football knowledge whenever he speaks. Hearing him talk about his defensive line, you hear so much pride in it, and you do get the sense he has a free rein on how he can coach and manage that line. And obviously I think it was you who asked a good question, like, hey, how does it feel to get Christian Wilkins? And he gave a great answer. Obviously, it feels great to have a piece like Christian Wilkins to come to that line and really just add another level of pedigree. But he also cited the guys he, quote unquote, camp bodies from last year who showed out, John Jenkins and of course Adam Butler. And he's like, we were always a good line. Of course, you get the one guy, maybe a little bit more of the attention, the media, the respect comes. And obviously that is a big piece in Christian Wilkins. Don't get me wrong. Like, that's very much deserved. But he is
Mhm.
proud of the line, the foundation he already had, and I think that is just as important.
The thing that, and this really dovetails into what I want to ask you the third time, but the thing that really gets me about Rob Leonard, Antonio Pierce, the way they're running the program, it is so beneficial. So let's go to AP. He's got, I think, three head coaches, four offensive coordinators, four um, linebacker coaches, in his first few years with Washington. No stability, a franchise that really has had, to be very frank, it lost its identity since Snyder took over. It isn't the way they used to be. And then he goes to the G-men, the New York Giants. And he learns something there about stability. He learns something there about continuity. And he learns what good franchises look like. Now, let's not pretend at this moment the Giants look great. We're not pretending anything, and they don't. But he learns something from the Giants. And what I found interesting is it's what he wants right now. He wants the same guys. This is a guy you're not going to see looking to replace performing staff all the time just for the purpose. I think he's going to have to deal with a lot of staff that people want, but you see what his modus operandi is. I'd love your thoughts on AP and just, the way he backs up Leonard, the way he backs up Patrick, the way he backs up Getsy. He's setting a culture of a hierarchy, but it's also everybody's on the same team.
You know, it reminds me a few weeks ago, I talked to one of the greatest high school coaches in Michigan high school football history, good friend of yours, Bill Faracco. And Bill
Great
Faracco
friend.
gave me some insight. I said, you know, you played because he was a quarterback, obviously, for the great Duffy Daugherty of Michigan State in the '60s, right? And I said, you know, you played for Duffy Daugherty, and obviously now you're a coach. When you played for him, were you absorbing? Were you taking like I like what that does for Duffy? I'm going to store that away. I think that was a genius coaching move. I think, and he said, you know, the number one thing I learned was Duffy let that amazing coaching tree around him. Woody Widenhofer, Hank Bula, all of them. He let them coach. He gave them freedom. He backed them up. He gave them all that kind of room. And Antonio Pierce has kind of done that same thing with that staff so far, and he's established a good staff. And a few weeks ago, you talked about an NFL executive friend of yours who says, I want my staff to be wanted by other teams. I want them to be coveted by other teams because of what they bring to a franchise, the football knowledge, everything into it. I want an MVP staff. And all signs are showing that Antonio Pierce is starting to hopefully assemble one for the Raiders, and he's an MVP in himself for just being able to manage all those pieces.
Yeah, I agree with him 100%. And I don't remember which coach it was, so I apologize. I interviewed so many people this past week, but I asked one of them, I watched Coach Pierce. I think it was Rob Leonard. Well, I know the coach was Rob Leonard. I don't remember if I whatever. But I said to him, I noticed during OTAs that Antonio Pierce, when one of your players did somebody right, backed you up. What's it like to coach for somebody who does that? And the reason I think it's important for your staff, but it's also important for your players. AP goes to bat for his players. They understand he wants me. I covered it in the Lions one time where there was a particular coach that did not want one of the players, didn't believe in one of the players, didn't like one of the players. It was very clear. Well, that player went on and had great success at another franchise, and it just never worked. And AP has really built into this team. You better appreciate your coaches. Coaches better appreciate your players. This is what you have, and we're going to develop them.
It's almost like being a teacher. You sometimes you have a choice, sometimes you don't, who you can get in your classroom, okay? But for that 1 hour, you got them in your classroom, and it's what you do with it as a teacher, as a coach. If they don't thrive in your classroom, but in fourth hour they're killing it and they got an A+, well, who's that on? And yeah, you get that sense with AP. You go to bat for your coaches, you go to bat for all your players, almost like an old-timey unwritten rule baseball manager. You always defend your players. Like that just seems to be the vibe with Antonio Pierce. And he's just such a coach's coach. He's such a player's coach.
Years ago from my dad, I I really wasn't. One of the mistakes I made as a young father was I parented my children the way my dad parented me, which was phenomenal. And I just assumed if that's how I needed parenting, that's what he needed. And it hit me one day with my son Shane. I can't parent him the way my dad parented me. We're two different people. And it's my job as the parent to relate to him, not him to relate to me. That was a mind bending lesson for me. And I think what we're seeing is the Raiders now saying, listen, we believe in you, or we wouldn't have picked you. We're a good drafting team now. We're not what they used to be. And it's our job to find the way to mold you. I like that approach.
Yeah, and it goes back to that old Al Davis adage, and I can hear it in my head right now from the old Football Life episode on him. Do unto others how they want to be treated, not how you want to be treated. Everyone is different. The great coaches, the
Mhm.
great managers know how to manage their certain employees to their best ability, or coaches coach certain players differently. Everyone's different. Everyone has a different perspective, different personality. Everyone requires that different kind of tutelage.
Yeah. And it's just fascinating to me. All right, let's turn to QB1. I have I mentioned, I think it was on Saturday's podcast, I don't remember now, but I mentioned how I had a coach tell me I'm not going to give a guy X amount of leeway. What if a guy, I think it was Steve Spurrier, I told the story, but um, or maybe Bobby Bowden, but whatever. But anyways, they told me, I'm going to put a guy in there, and well, how long of a leash does he get? Well, depends on how much of a leash he's earned. If he's not performed well, it's a short leash. If he plays well for a long time and then makes some mistakes, I'm not pulling him for a couple of mistakes, but he better not start with the mistakes. It better start with the success. I say all that because when you discuss QB1 for the Raiders, and when they finally settle on one, and that guy gets the job, if he starts playing poorly early, I don't think he has a leash at all. I think he gets yanked early. But if he plays well early and then makes mistakes, okay, I think you live with that because he's developing. And because if he has a track record of success, you'll tolerate more. If I go to a restaurant, kids misbehaving and screaming and yelling, first of all, I judge the parents, not the kid. I'm going to probably give the kid a lot more leeway. I mean, I'm probably not going to want to tolerate that as much as if it were my kid, although I'm going to demand more from my children. I think QB1, I think fans need to approach this with well, if you decide a guy after the competition's the quarterback, then I think it's fair to say, okay, I'm going to evaluate him after 3 quarters of the first game. But if he plays really good those first 3 or 4 games and then has a bad one, the fourth or fifth, I don't think you make a switch then when there's a track record of success. How would you handle QB1?
Well, I think you hit it on the head, especially if they start out strong early, whoever obviously gets the starting gig. We have to have some, and I say we as in just a broader culture, not even just football. You got to be able to make mistakes, have a slump. Everyone's gonna have a bad week, a bad day, a bad game, and that's just being human. That's just being an athlete. A fierce competitor in a tough sport. Um, Slumps are slumps. If there's a rough game or two stretch, I don't think you hit the panic button. If you are AP or this Raiders staff, you got two proven starters on the roster. Both guys are highly competitive, fierce competitors throughout their whole football careers. Both of them have had to fight and scrap and claw with their fingernails for everything they've ever gotten on a football field. And you get the sense that whoever does get that QB1 job is going to do his darn hardest not to lose it and to perform on the field. But, yeah, you got to give them that leeway. And yeah, especially if they start off strong too. You
Right.
dance with the girl you brought, and that could be very interesting. It's going to be tough though because fans, the outside noise is going to want to influence that, of course, as the season goes on. It's going to be on and incumbent upon AP to stick with his vision, and it has to be purely AP's vision.
You just said something I thought was really brilliant. I want to go back and drill down on that a little bit. You're talking about ignoring the noise. I think sometimes what people don't get, and I'm glad that you got this, is that the fans are the ones buying the shirts, buying the memorabilia, buying the tickets, doing the traveling, all of it. I've said multiple times, the only people that pay to be in a football stadium are the fans. All the rest of us get paid. The guy selling popcorn, me, players, coaches, management, security, everybody's getting paid except the most important person, which are the people buying the tickets. That said, a coach can't be tone deaf in relating to his fans, but he has to be tone deaf when it comes to sticking with his convictions. Agree or disagree?
Oh, I completely agree, and I think there's a balance there, but at the end of the day, you're the football coach. You're not here to cater to fans, you know. And
Yep.
obviously, you know, part of the social contract is, you know, you're going to put out a good team to win for this fan base. Obviously, you want to have a good team, you want to have a good product on the field, but at the end of the day, it is your decision on what that good product looks like, and you have to use your
Yeah.
experience and your vision.
That's a great point, Michael. 100% agree with you. Couldn't think any more differently. I mean, couldn't agree with you anymore. Let's switch directions now to a question that's going to be a real topic this week on the podcast. And we hit on it yesterday, and I want to hit on it again today. The preseason is going to be more important. And when I say preseason, I mean preseason games are going to be more important than at any time that I've ever been around. I've always said joint practices are more valuable than preseason games. And let me just tell you why I think that is. I'm a guy that says don't play your starters if they're a proven starter. Like Max Crosby should not touch a field in the preseason. Christian Wilkins shouldn't touch a field. Devontae Adams should. But here's the problem: you got two quarterbacks competing for the job, two, and if you've and I think three. If you want to know the truth, I mean, I think Anthony Brown. He's played more games in this. I mean, he's played games in this league. He started and played in this league. Um, so you got three guys competing for QB1, and at some point they've got to get real reps, but they have to get real reps with the best players. Now, there's no competition with Christian. There's no competition with Max, so you don't have to play them. But what's the fine line with, all right, we're going to probably have to play most of our starters or the best second stringers, for the first half of the first two games, maybe if until the quarterback situation. I mean, this becomes an interesting dilemma for the Raiders on how they approach free agency, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And I think it's also going to be a good litmus test early on as to who the real competitors are and how AP can manage those competitors. Obviously, it is preseason, and you're going to have to do a lot of mixing and matching with all these key players on the field in preseason games. And of course, if you're a head coach and you play someone in a preseason game and they blow out an ACL, well, then you look like a donkey. And it's easy to look at that in hindsight if that were to happen. But at the end of the day, you have a competitive team with pieces you believe in. They want to fight for spots, and it's just beyond the quarterback position. I think there are
Yeah.
a lot of guys on the Raiders that can really compete and do something this year. A lot of the rookies, a lot of the new people we brought in. So I think it is going to be mixing and matching, and especially it's vital for the quarterbacks to be getting those reps with all those guys and to get quality looks so they can perform and show in a quality environment what they can do.
Yeah, that's a super good point on your part. All right, we're going to end with this. What rookie are you now? I'm taking Brock Bowers out of this and JPJ. And matter of fact, before you answer, I want to write something down because I want to show it to the crowd. Give me 1 second here. What rookie are you most excited to see during training camp? I mean, as it gets going, what guy are you going to be really focused on?
Especially, man, as the pads come on and everything starts tightening up, and You already know the answer. It's Tommy freaking Eichenberg. I
And listen, you tell the people the truth. Did we plan that? Was that anything prepared or talked about?
nope, but no, it wasn't. But I mean, what's not to love about Tommy freaking Eichenberg? Dude is tougher than a $2 steak, nails, rocks, pick any idiom you want, okay? The guy's an animal. I'll tell you
He
what,
is.
I he's gonna be special, I think. I really do.
This is how I equate him. Have you ever been to the zoo and they put the food out and the animals are just pacing in their cage like, let me out, let me out. And they just go back and forth and back. And then as soon as the gate opens, release the hounds. I mean, that is Tommy freaking Eichenberg. Is have I ever given a better nickname than that?
I don't know. The great coach Chuck Grenier is pretty good too, but Tommy freaking Eichenberg just has a nice flow to it.
He is a guy, I'm telling you, just watching him and talking to people, he's intense now. There's no him and Brock Bowers, there's no play in them. They're just businessmen. And their business is eating up and go. Whoever doesn't have a jersey that looks like mine, let's go. Um, Tommy freaking Eichenberg is a lot like Robert Spillane, and warning, warning, will injure people. When Robert Spillane was at Western, so I have to tell you this story because I covered the Big Ten, but when Big Ten teams would play Western or whatever, and I was friends with PJ Fleck, very close friends with PJ Fleck, and very good friends with some Bill Cubit, who was the head coach there, whatever. I remember when he was there, being told specifically, yeah, that guy doesn't he doesn't understand walkthrough. If he's got a jersey on, practice jersey, game jersey, it's just one speed. Tommy freaking Eichenberg is Spillane 2.0. He's gonna be a lot of fun. But let me give you a name that intrigues me. Let me give you a name that after camp, I'm thinking, all right, I see you. And I want you to just keep this name in the back of your head, DeCamerion Richardson. That kid, he's raw. Not going to pretend that he is raw. Well, let me tell you something, Michael. That kid, he's got genuine, real deal written all over him. And I'm going to give you one other one, Trey Taylor. And I mean, you spend time with Trey Taylor. There are guys that you're like, that's a football player. You just know a funny one. Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell. If you ran into each of them not in football gear in the Raiders parking lot, oh, they must be accountants. They must be people here, I mean, or whatever. You walk by Trey Taylor, who's straight as a board, man. He was a member of the Air Force Academy, and he is just Nister. I'm just going to start calling him. I got to think of a good nickname for him. I just got to come up with, but he's Mr. Air Force officer. He is. You just walk near him and you're like, oh, that's a football player right there. Now that guy. I mean, he's little because he's a safety. Now that's not fair coming from me. I'm enormous, but he just built. He's a football player. That's a guy I'm looking forward to also.
Yeah, and we talked about it. You asked me a few months ago, favorite or gem of the draft that you think could really pop off. And I thought Trey Taylor, just the discipline. I love the military academy background. I mean, you say jump, he says on who? Like he's coming. It's gonna be
That is such a great line. I am going to use that. He says jumping rather than how high, it's on who, sir.
Exactly. I think he could be a real dog, man.
That guy, I'm just telling you, he just, there are some people you walk by and you think football player. Then there's some guy you walk by and it's like, I don't care what they are. That's good people. Then there are people you walk by and they're like complete package. And that kid is, as a person, football player, I will, yeah, I've got big predictions for him. I'm going to wait till we get closer to camp when I make my predictions on players. I got big predictions. He's going to have a very tough time breaking into a starting lineup with Marcus Epps, who's phenomenal, and with Trayvon Merrick, who's really come into his own. He's going to have some trouble breaking into that, but I think he's going to make the roster. In fact, my roster prediction has him in there. I think he makes the roster, and this is a guy that I'm not willing to say this yet, but I want to see some more from. But I will be stunned one day if he's not a captain of the Las Vegas Raiders. Just the way he handles himself. Again, not just a football player, but a guy. He's the real deal. And I'll tell you what, real deal. All right. You're in the midst of a series you're writing right now that's been tremendously well received. Talk about this 5-part series that you're doing.
Well, obviously, it was tipped off to you and your beautiful wife Shannon at a dinner by a renowned league executive about the 5 pillars of a healthy franchise, and that's all I'm going to get into right now. I'm really excited, and I think it's going to be very insightful for people who maybe don't have the audio version of your podcast, Riding with Hondo and Dexter, but it's going to be very fascinating when it comes out, and I think hopefully it'll open a lot of eyes as to just the place the Raiders are in right now.
Yeah, I agree with you. And part one was yesterday, and obviously, depending when people see it, part two's today on Tuesday, and then we move forward. But that was, and for the interest of full disclosure, we're not revealing who the person was because it was an off the record dinner, but I have permission to use those 5 pillars. You know who the person was. And I think their opinion is very important on how to build a successful franchise. And when they gave Shannon and I those 5 pillars, we were like, I mean, it was so big that my wife, who enjoys football and is a Raider fan, we got in the car and she's like, was that as important as I thought it was? And I said, yeah, sweetie, that was. She's like, I could have listened to that all day long. It's a great series. I mean, it's not me, it's them talking. I just thought it was a great job really getting that insight. What did you get from that conversation we had? What did you learn from the guy?
What I learned is just how much of a core, how much at a grassroots level, what makes a successful organization in terms of being healthy. That the word healthy really stood out to me. Is your organization healthy? And and then I kind of would go back and just apply everything, no spoilers, apply everything to other teams around the league and and I'm not gonna say any takes on what I think is healthy or not healthy around the league, but you kind of just look at things through this lens of what this guy said, and you're just like, interesting. And you really kind of start separating, who the real franchises are from maybe some of the ones that are struggling.
Right. I got an email I have to read from you from Peter M. in Oakland. Ready? Michael, Hondo's been busting your balls when you call the Raiders we, us, all of that. And I understand why now, since he described, you said you were not a fan, and he's holding you to that standard. Because when I saw him with Aiden, he made the statement with Aiden Champion. All right. You seem like a fan, nothing wrong with that. I'm going to let it go. Why don't you just admit it? You want to join the dark side. Turn your back, French. That's where I started. When the people started calling you Frenchie, that's why I've been calling you Frenchie. Turn your back, French. By the way, do you remember the song, the TV show that had Mr. French?
I can't recall that.
Go look up the TV show that had the butler named Mr. French, one of the greatest TV shows of all time. Okay. Turn your back to the right. Turn your back to the turn your back. Turn your face to the dark side, Frenchie. Just admit it. You're one of us now. Peter M.
Well,
Are you one of
you
them?
know,
Have you officially joined the dark side, Frenchie?
depending on how I answer this, I could be in the running for some black Nike Air Forces, size 9, by the way. And not that we're
Wait,
keeping.
wait, wait. As a grown man, I don't know that I would admit I wear a size 9.
Hey, it's the best. That's what I'm working with here. Um, the Raider Nation has always had, and the franchise of the Raiders has always had a special place in my heart, and it really did help foster my love growing up as an NFL films nerd, and just growing up, watching the old Raider tapes and all that. So I do it. There's a special place in my heart for the Raiders, the silver and
All
black.
right.
The autumn
He
wind.
says he says special place, but he is not admitting fandom, ladies and gentlemen. So I want everyone to back off. I'm going to hold him to that standard. Now, if that changes, I'm good with that. As your boss, I'm good with that. I'm just saying if you become one, I'm going to hold, but you asked me to hold you to the standard. That's what you asked me. So
Yeah,
I'm
and
over here
we
getting in trouble by the fans, Frenchie, for doing what you want me to avenge me.
No, you guys. I read the comments too, and I just feel bad. I'm just like, oh man. But
I don't read.
hey,
I
yeah,
just
we
listen. Zeke Trezevant, early on when he started working for me, well over a year ago, said to me, Hondo, don't read the comments. I still read them. And I did for a long time because I felt like I wanted to be able to answer people and whatever. And there's a small group, 1% that just go too far. So I just don't, because when they made comments about my son, it just went far enough. And so I don't read them, but I got to tell you, I don't have a problem with it because I love the fans. 98% of them are so awesome. And I love that they're busting me for it, but I don't mind being busted. I want to be busted on. So if you change, we will make an official announcement that you're joining the dark side. And I literally don't mean that rudely. It's what they call it. That if you make that switch, Frenchie, but you're making it. You made it as a journalist when the fans have given you a nickname and it's not offensive. Frenchie. So there you go, Frenchie.
right. No, I'm honored, and hey, we talk about great coaches all the time, guys, and Hondo is. He holds you to the standard you want to be held to, and great coaches do what they got to do to succeed, and Hondo's one of them. He really is.
You know where I learned that? I learned that from Nick Saban and Tom Izzo. So when you are recruited to Alabama when Nick was there, or Michigan State when he was there, or Michigan State with Tom Izzo, they give you a 3x5 card and they say write down your goals. And almost every player puts pro athlete and puts whatever their standards are. Then they turn to the player, and this is so brilliant. And they say, listen, these were your goals. So this is what you told me you want. So when you don't perform at the level to get to where you wanted to go, and if it's graduation, I've graduated a ton of players, I know what it takes. If it's pros, I've put a lot of guys there, I know what it takes. Whatever. If you don't give me in practice and in life the standard to be that, I'm going to hold you accountable to yourself. That's the best form of leadership, man. I've learned that with my children. Okay, what do you want? What do you want? Great stuff. Frenchie, good job by you. Take your size 9 and go have yourself a good time. Thank you for breaking it down. Let's make sure, everybody, you're checking out Frenchie's 5-part series. Are the Raiders healthy as a franchise? Part 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Great writing. If you missed part 1, you can go back and find it on the site or look at my Twitter, which is at Hondo Carpenter. And you can find it there. Don't forget si.com/NFL/Raider beat Raiders. Because of Michael and our staff, we have such a great staff. We are writing 10 or more pieces of content every single day. We are pumping out. Nobody has more than us. We're pumping it out because, and here's why. You folks like, subscribe, share, and read. Because you consume it, SI allows us to continue to add to our staff and keep giving you more and more and more. So, you know what? Keep coming, keep consuming, keep sharing, keep liking, keep subscribing. We'll see you all later. Frenchie, real quick, tell them your handle on X.
At Michael Michael France, like the country, FRANCE SI, Michael France SI.
You just need to change it to Frenchie. I like that.
I'd
All
have
right.
to.
We'll see you tomorrow, everybody.